and get this on the record.
Oh, y'all not recording yet? Okay.
With all of the technical difficulties, I apologize about that.
All right. Tell me when.
Go ahead. You're ready.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll start all over.
So with Candace Owens, you were talking about Candace Owens.
Well, yeah, we talked about Candace Owens because Savion Keith had talked about the video that y'all wanted to show. So the video, I shared that video.
The link is in the chat room for those of who are interested into what Will's talking about.
Okay, and please go look at that video because we like to show that prior to having a discussion. But for promotional purposes and copyright infringement, we only can show a portion of it to you. So go and look at the entire video, and then maybe you can come back next week and have a discussion. Or if you look at it, well, you won't be able to look at it during this time frame. But anyway, Tucker Carlson, who came from the left, and what I mean by the left is he came from a more of a liberal viewpoint of society. He came and he kind of gravitated towards the right or the more conservative side. So did Candace Owens, and so did myself. Okay, and so I wanted to share that video and say to people, listen, Candace Owens, I agree with a lot of stuff that she talks about, especially her stance on Gaza, who she's been extremely alienated from the conservative movement because of her stance on Gaza. So is Tucker Carlson. I think it's advantageous, though, for people that have experienced both sides of a particular ideology in order to be able to grasp it and be able to articulate it to the masses of people. And so I find myself, it's advantageous for me specifically. But for those who aren't familiar with both sides, I strongly encourage reading, and reading, okay? In the Bible, Hosea 4:6, it says, my people are destroyed by lack of knowledge, not the lack of money, not the lack of grace, not the lack of faith, not the lack of any of that nonsense. It's the lack of knowledge. And so that's why I think it's important about this show is that we want to pursue knowledge. We don't want to come on here with just our personal opinions. We want to come on here and say, okay, here's our sources. Here's my interpretation of the sources. Do I know everything? Hell no. As a matter of fact, everything I tell you is a lie until you verify it for yourself. So you can look at this show and say, we could rename the show The Liars Academy or something like that, because we want you to not just accept what we say, go and check it out for yourself. Because we're here to study and research, and that's the way that we're going to come up with some strategies on how to deal with the contradictions that we created. Not that some conspiratorial element created, not the Anunnaki coming out the sky, not just anything that's other than yourself. That the real problem is us. Michael Jackson made a song about man in the mirror, and that's so true. So Candace Owens was critiquing Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin, who is the prime minister of Russia, the leader of Russia. Right now, there's an ongoing war with Russia and Ukraine, and most people have no idea what it's about. And so I kind of tell people, listen, let's become aware of what's going on in the world from a different perspective than what the mainstream media is teaching you. Okay, the mainstream media has an agenda. You can't knock them. They have an agenda. The problem is you have to have an agenda. And your agenda should be is to decipher through what they share with us, what they tell us, and we decide whether it's true or not. Everything that I found that they pretty much told me, once I went out and did just a smallest amount of research, I found it was contrary to what they said. And I said, okay, they have an agenda. So we must have an agenda too to decipher through their nonsense. So what's going on in Russia right now, the reason why Russia attacked Ukraine, most people have no idea. Most people have no idea. But there's two books that I'm subscribed to that goes into the populist viewpoint of world affairs, world systems, world strategy. That's the American Free Press and the Barnes Review. And the reason why they're so effective is because they incorporate all subject matter, including one of the elephants in the room is the Jewish question. Most people shy away from that question because you're automatically labeled anti-Semite. Whether you're telling the truth or not, you're labeled anti-Semite. And I'm tired of all this nonsense that goes on in the world today where we got to shy away and be scared of our jobs, of our reputation or whatever, because we're trying to address the truth. throughout history, from biblical times and before biblical times. Because before Jesus Christ even existed, there have been revolutions and revolts against the oppressor, as it pertains to the oppressed. Okay, but most of the time, historically, through the research that we've done, we find that the oppressed are the ones that have caused their oppression, and now they're playing like victims and they're acting like they're helpless and they can't do anything about it. And to me, personally, I say you get what you deserve. You get what you deserve. You brought this on yourself, and if you don't have sense enough to address it, go do some research and find out what the contradictions are. You should suffer. And that's what historically, even just from the biblical perspective, they have all done it. So let me not get off the subject of Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson goes to Russia and interviews Vladimir Putin for about 2 hours. Now, Vladimir Putin is a very good, interesting dynamic that's going on between Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin. Tucker Carlson asks a question. Vladimir Putin responds, but he responds from a historical perspective. Most people don't want to hear the history of nothing. And that's what I'm adamantly opposed to. Learn the history. And so Vladimir Putin made him listen to the history of Russia's relationship with Ukraine, and worse, Russia's relationship with the world. And even though Tucker Carlson was kind of shucking off, saying, "Well, I don't need all that information," and Vladimir Putin said, "Oh yeah, you do. You need to learn the history." And that's the problem with us right now today. We want to learn fragments of stuff. We want to learn fragments of history. You don't learn nothing from fragments, okay? Yeah, you do learn something. You learn a fragment of history, okay? But you have to start to study and research. And my struggle earlier this week was, let's read the whole book. I don't care how boring it is to people, okay? We're going to have to uplift ourselves and learn to start studying the history of a process in order to be able to get to a conclusion. The only way you're going to be able to draw a conclusion of something is to understand the history of it. And just doing the fragments of it, like Putin was telling Tucker Carlson, you can't understand what we're fighting about here in Russia if you don't understand the history of it. So he forced Tucker Carlson to sit down and listen to this so-called boring history, which was intriguing to me and very impressive and exciting. But to tell Tucker Carlson, here is the history of what's going on. This is why we're revolted. Okay, and so people can go look at that video and understand this, that if the United States during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1960 or 61, somewhere around that time, if Russia hadn't have pulled those missiles out of Cuba, we would have flattened Cuba. That's a perfect example of why Putin went into Ukraine. Okay, well, two examples. That was one, and the other example was when Hitler had to go in and attack Poland. He was forced to do that because they were attacking the German people that lived in Poland, just like Ukraine was attacking the Russian people that lived in the Donbass in Ukraine. Okay, that's what's important for us to understand. Now, let me say this: we were talking about how this show got started. We were starting with this book here, okay, and I'm a little bit less sympathetic than the two hosts of the show because I don't care nothing about attacking Christians. I'm going to attack everybody where I see it fit, okay? And Christians, I'm attacking you all because you all read the Bible from this romanticized viewpoint, and that's why nothing gets done. As many churches we have in our community in the United States, this should be a free country. We should be free from tyranny and injustice if just the churches alone would do what they're supposed to and follow in the Bible. So I said, okay, since you're not going to read the Bible, then why don't you get this book here, The Christian and the Civil Government, and read Romans, and let's define Romans, the 13th chapter. If we can understand Romans, the 13th chapter, you understand that as a Christian, you should be totally upset with what the government is doing, and it's your responsibility to rebel against the tyranny and injustice of the government that you created, that we created. Now, is the show just for Christians? No, the show is not just for Christians. It just so happened that we started with this book, which pertained to Christians. Now, I'm going to take it further and say, for you taxpayers, for you lazy, ignorant taxpayers out there that sit up here and live in this corrupted system and don't raise any type of rebellion against where your tax dollars are going, you're just as cowardly as the Christians who I'm blasting right now. Okay, so you taxpayers, don't tell me that you're not political while your tax dollars is going to support all this this deception, this corruption, this murder around the world and even in this country. Your tax dollars are doing that, and you have a responsibility. If that's where your tax dollars are going, and you're going to be held responsible for it unless you do something about it. Now, for you to go out and attack the government or whomever by yourself, we'd be totally committing suicide. But first and foremost is that we should get the knowledge and say, okay, because like me, like you, I'm scared to death too, and you are scared. Everybody on this show is scared to death to attack or to challenge this government or those who control the money power. We're all scared of it. But what I find is that in the Bible, and I'm not a Christian. I want to make sure people are clear on that. I'm not a Christian, okay? But I read the Bible and understand, okay, this is what the Bible wants us to do, okay? We spend more time telling people we're a Christian, and we should spend more time understanding what the Bible says and follow the commandments of your so-called creator, your God. And if that's the case, then we can all be Christians and work to deal with the system that has so many contradictions, either overthrowing it or internally changing it where it's going to benefit the masses of the people. So that video with Tucker Carlson is dealing with the historical question, and that's what we're going to deal with on this show. We're going to be the Putins on this show. We're going to make people read. We're going to make people sit down and listen to the boring, longevity of answers that we want to give historically to define a particular situation. That's the only way we're going to get an understanding of anything. That's why I say, let's read the book. Okay, read the book. Don't glaze through it. Read the book. We'll give you a month, whatever, to read it or whatever, and then we can go back and have some constructive discussion. I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to hear what I have to say, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what the video that I shared with earlier this week. We were talking about what's going on in Ukraine. Most people don't know. Now, did anybody on this show can tell us any more about Ukraine other than the short information I just shared? Anybody want to say anything on that? What's going on in Ukraine?
No, I think everybody just say Keith, you got something you want to say. I think everybody else just listening right now. Okay. Then so this is the other book now. Usury is Tony. Your title. I'm going to stick to your subject matter now because I can go on a rant easily. But now you got a syllabus that you want us to follow. I have it on my phone, or do you want to just kind of keep us on track with that? Sure. You can go ahead. We can start out with the Christians, and we were talking about what he's talking about in that book, taxes. So we can go ahead and start out with that because that's just going to segue right into the Federal Reserve.
Okay.
So I just wanted to read a quote I just wanted to read something out of Usury and Christendom by Michael Hoffman. I'm on page 30. So what the book is talking about is the battle we will examine consists in a part of an economic theology that was addressed a major moral conflict, a rising merchant class and its obligation to engage in commerce and exercise property rights in accordance with God, who is the supreme owner of all property over mankind, has only stewardship. The problem is that in the matters of money, contemporary Christianity represents a drastic departure from the spirit of the original biblical patriotist and ecclesiastic foundation of which grew Christendom and the civilization of Europe. So basically what the usury concept is saying that you may trade it, or what the Bible is saying is that you may trade at a profit, but you may not trade for profit. Your object must not be primarily to make a profit, but primarily to either earn your living or to help your fellow man. So I just wanted to add that in there because as far as usury goes, this is what we've got to understand. This is where I believe the Christians or whoever has this usury term misinterpreted.
Yeah. When you finish there?
I'm done. Yeah.
Okay. When you give the page, you always give the paragraph that you're reading from too, if you could, so we can really help us really follow there. So I was trying to find the spot that you were reading from. Even though I understood it, I still wanted to reread
Yeah,
it again.
I kind of skipped over. I skipped over a few
Oh, you
places
did?
I
Okay.
highlighted.
Okay. But usury is a profound word, and let me give a couple of different definitions that come from usury that I wrote down out of this book. Usury. So it says usury in Christendom, the mortal sin that was and now is not. Okay. You go 99.9% of Christians that you ask what usury is about, they have no idea. And to me, that's a severe problem. That's one of the reasons why we're in the situation we're in now. Because if we understood usury, we'd understand the violation of the Constitution that the Federal Reserve has imposed on it when it was created in this country in 1913. Now, the source that I get that from is The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. That book is a great book to really for us to understand the usury. Okay. Now, a condensed version of that is Peter Kershaw's book called Economic Solutions. Could you hold that up, Savion? I mean, Keith. This book here is a condensed version of The Creature from Jekyll Island. Most people don't want to read a 600-800-page book because they feel that it's, they're too busy slaving for a job and doing everything else that is unproductive for them. Okay, they're just trying to pay bills. The book on the left is The Economic Solution by Peter Kershaw. That's a condensed version of The Creature from Jekyll Island. So you can read that in probably a day. That will give us a better understanding of the many, the diverse definition of usury. But here are a few the verses in the Bible. I mean, out of usury and Christendom, they come from pretty much the Bible on what usury is about. Okay, drawing profit without labor, loss, or risk, the taking of gain for the use of money. If we desire a Christian society, usury must be abolished. Usury is a weapon of warfare. Christ's parable on the talents. If people don't want people to understand it, read Christ's parable on the talents. Okay, I don't have that particular verse in right now, but that you could just look it up. I know it's in Matthew. It's in the New Testament. And then usury and interest are one and the same thing. So interest, if you don't understand what usury is, just say interest. Okay, the interest that they're charging on money. And when Christianity began, and what Jesus and the people before Jesus were fighting for, was fighting against the usury that would be happening within the temples. Okay, your first banks were the temples, and the priests became, opportunistic and started working with usury. And so that's why Jesus and many others before him and after him fought adamantly against the priest in the temple, because they were practicing usury, and usury does nothing but makes the rich poor and the poor poorer. I guess that's a good phrase to use. Okay, so we wanted to start out with this subject matter, and it just happened to deal with Christians. But is Christians the only problem? No. But I tell you one thing: all revolutions historically have started with a handful of people. Okay, and most of the time it has been people that were believers in the holy books. Okay, because they read the holy books and they said, wow, this here makes a lot of sense. And I have I've got some noise in the background. I hope people can still hear me. But this information can help me to free not only myself, but help me to free others. So Christians out there spreading the word about God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, which to me, okay, what does it mean? Then define that. Does that mean that I'm supposed to rise up and destroy usury? And does it mean I'm supposed to rise up and destroy tyrannical governments? Does it mean that I want mankind to be able to coexist with other mankind in a loving and caring relationship and not trying to take advantage of one another, but living and peacefully and coexisting with one another? That's what it should be. And that's what the Christians should be preaching out there on Sunday mornings, Wednesday nights, or wherever they're out there, whatever they're doing. Okay. So this information, this is what we just started off with. We're going to be addressing as many sectors of society as we possibly can. Do we want to hear input? Yes, we do. But we also want to know your source. When you give your input, let me know your source. Because we want people to get into the mindset of reading the book from front to end, and then having discussion on it. Now, there's a ton of books out there, and the co-host, host and the co-host on the show get frustrated with me because every week I'm introducing a new book to them, so they can't even finish the current book
that I recommended because they're so busy going to another book, which it's understandable, but still go ahead and get those books, and then you kind of cross-reference. Because I got like right here, I got 10 books in front of me, and I am reading one solid book, but all my books kind of bleed over or overlay with other books, other material that I'm reading. Okay, usury, it should be the subject matter that all of us are concerned about, because if we can solve this equation of usury, we can make the world a better place overnight. Mark Twain said, I think it was Mark Twain, who said, if the people in this country ever understood how the banking system works, it'll be a revolution overnight. And that's for sure. It'll be a revolution overnight. Now, I don't want to sit there and rant and rave all night long. I can,
No,
but I'm not.
you good.
Huh?
You good. I had a couple things I wanted to add on to that, as far as what you were saying about the usury and how it ties into the Constitution. And again, what I said earlier about, why we're here. If you're claiming that you're going to be a Christian, then you need to follow suit and do what Jesus was doing. And like you said, we just so happen to start off with the Christian side of it. I guess we'll go later into Hebrew Israelite, and then we'll also go into Islam, and things like that. But we just so happen to start off with Christianity. Now, one of the things that the Constitution says, and it falls right in line with I think Pastor John Weaver's book. What's the title of that book? Will John Weaver's book? It ties
the Christian and civil government.
Okay, yeah. So now the Declaration of Independence was written before the Constitution, but in the Declaration of Independence, it was explaining how that these group of men understood that it's self-evident that all men are created equal. And so later on down the line, it says that to secure these rights, the governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, from the people, meaning from the people, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So that just falls right in line with what Jesus is doing and what the Constitution, and I think we were talking earlier about this a couple of days ago, is your Second Amendment right, the right to bear arms. It's not just a right to, carry so you can go deer hunting and bear hunting and all of that. No, it's a right to, to have, so you can have a well-formed militia. So whenever you have a tyrannical government, you can shut that government down. That was the first thing they said in the first paragraph. They said right in the Declaration of Independence, and then it further was revealed in the Constitution in the Second Amendment. So you have that right to do that. You are supposed to do that. Who was it, Will, that said all it takes for evil to persist is for good men to do nothing? So
Thomas
if you
Jefferson.
sit there, Thomas Jefferson. So yeah,
yeah.
If you sit and do nothing, then you're just as guilty as the people who are doing it to you. I just wanted to kind of point that out so people could get an understanding how that kind of ties in, how he's tying in the Constitution with his book, with Romans 13. Because that's what we've been hammering for the last couple of weeks is Romans 13. And on top of that, when people say, oh, I'm not supposed to do that, we're going to leave it to God. But in John 10:35, I think it says, is it not written in your law that I said ye are gods? So 34. I'm sorry, 10:34. So is it not written in your law that I said you're gods? Jesus never called himself a Christian. He never did that. But because you guys call him a Christian, then you are you know what I'm saying? The actual meaning of the word Christian is just anointed one or Messiah, somebody who's anointed. And I feel like, so when you said earlier, Will, that you said you weren't a Christian, I would have to kind of disagree a little bit with that, because I consider myself a Christian, because I feel like I'm anointed in so much as, I'm studying a word. I'm doing what he did. I'm trying to emulate what he did. Am I perfect with it? No, by no means, but I'm trying to do what he did, and study the knowledge. So I don't so I don't have to worry about being destroyed, you know, for lack of knowledge. Not lack of going to church and not lack of giving a tithe, you know, but lack of knowledge. I just kind of wanted to point that out a little bit.
And yeah, while we're on John Weaver's book, and in the future, I'd like to cover tithing and offering and see, because that's definitely a topic that needs to be discussed. But on page 12 of Pastor John Weaver's book, Christian Civil Government, it says America was founded as a republic, not as a democracy. The word democracy literally means mob rule. You know, as Christians, we're well, if you want to consider yourself a Christian, we're supposed to be ruled by law, not by a majority, but by principle. The Bible, however, does not necessarily demand that a country have a certain type of government, such as a monarchy. It does lay down guidelines and prerequisites and qualifications concerning rulers. And this is what we want to go over.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
Before you go back in, well, I wanted to ask, man, of our audience. I mean, I know it's a small audience, but for anybody that's out there listening, you know, do you have any questions? Do you have anything, you know, go ahead, let's get it in, man. Let's talk about it. That's what the show is. Let's talk about it. If you have any questions, something that you've been wanting to ask, you know, let's talk about it.
Yeah, definitely, because we were just starting out with just three of us really, or four of us starting out, and the other person that was supposed to have been on, something always comes up when he comes down to have the discussion, but he was a Hebrew Israelite faith, and we were having an open dialogue, and we said, okay, well, let's get together, let's do a call, and let's you bring on some of your friends, and let's talk about Romans the 13th chapter, because me and the person was having a debate on Romans the 13th chapter, and I told him it's not just about us submitting blindly to a government, but it's about us doing something about a tyrannical government. We don't supposed to follow tyrannical governments. We can follow godly, fair, just governments. But common sense, whether the Bible says or not, you don't want to be ruled by any type of tyrant. Your job is to rebel. A slave is supposed to rebel against a slave master. If the slave is comfortable with it, then they get what they deserve. I tell the slave master, impose as much brutality as you can on that damn slave, because if they either gonna wake up and fight for their freedom, or they're gonna die miserably or suffer miserably, and they get either one, whichever way they want to go. That's the path they chose. That's the way. That's what's gonna happen to them. So now, Savion, you were talking about page 12 of this Christian and the civil government. That's a good verse there, and that we have a video too. If you can, Savion, put that video of Pastor John Weaver in the chat so people can go back and look at that as well for the upcoming weeks and get a better idea of what we're talking about in this book, because that's him summing up his book. And we may even have him on the show at some juncture, okay? And like I said, it's not a Christian show. We're open to dialogue across the realm, because it's not just Christians that have caused this problem. It's all of us have caused this problem. But I think one of the effective blueprints to get us out of it is for those Christians who read that Bible. You have a powerful document that we can use to strategize around overturning some of the oppressive conditions that we created. Now, I want to always emphasize that we created, because we use this word "they" a lot, and they haven't got anything to do with it but reaping the benefits of our ignorance. Okay, they're benefiting off of our ignorance. Shame on us for letting them benefit off of our ignorance. But the way to overcome that is knowledge. Knowledge overcomes fear, and fear, the acronym of fear to me, is false expectations appearing real based on ignorance. So since you don't have the knowledge, you're going to be ruled by fear. Stevie Wonder says it wonderfully in his song, Superstition. When we believe in things we don't understand, we suffer. And what I find is that both Christians and non-Christians don't really study that Bible to try to get a better understanding. Now, one reason, I'm going to get to your question in a minute, Savion, but I mean, daggone, man, just kill me.
And well, let me ask you this real quick. So I want you to give us a quick overview of the Federal Reserve and how that became to be in the United States, going back to, I think, you were talking about Andrew Jackson. You know, so Andrew Jackson was actually going up against the Federal Reserve or the
Federal Reserve
bankers
banks. Yeah.
of his
Okay,
time.
but let me say that. I mean, dang, gone it, you're gonna kill me.
This is why I keep interrupting you. So you can get it right. Think about it. But yeah, I want you to kind of elaborate on that Federal Reserve a little bit. But go ahead. Yeah, finish your question.
Okay,
Finish your answer.
okay. So Keith was asking about the page 12 of the Christian and Civil Government. Be sure to put that link in the chat, okay? The one I
It's
sent
in
you on
there.
Pastor John Weaver. Okay,
So be
great.
sure everybody, when the video is over, that we go in and we check the chat to grab the links that you guys can watch at a later time or date.
Yeah, because I know people are more apt to watch videos than you are to get the book and read. But the book, believe me, has much more information than the video. But since it is Pastor John Weaver talking about his book, then that'll give you kind of heads up. But I would strongly encourage people to go get this book. How much was it, Keith, or either Tony? How much was the book? It's not that expensive, right? It's a small
It was
book.
about $35 on eBay.
This small book was?
Oh, no. This one was about I think about maybe 15, 20 bucks on thrift books. Usury and Christian by Michael Hoffman was about 40 bucks on eBay.
Yeah, 40 bucks. Okay. And these people have YouTube videos you can watch. They got newsletters out. I'm subscribed to his newsletter. Michael Hoffman and Usury and Christian. So we're talking about the type of government that we want to have. Okay. All right. Keith, say what the question was again. You said about you talking about a republic and a democracy.
So I just read a quote out of there, and on page 12, right under there is no specified form of civil government. America, last paragraph, America was founded as a republic, not as a democracy. The word democracy literally means mob rule. In a republic, we are to be ruled by law, not by the majority, but by law, by principle. And you could replace in the republic, you could just put Christians, you know.
Yeah. Now the beginning of this says that there's no government that's recommended. I say that a Christian should be demanding a theocracy. That means because that's what Romans, the 13th chapter, says that the governments that are put in place are ordained by God. That means that they're following God's law. If they don't follow God's law and you're a Christian, even if you're not a Christian, that means it's a tyrannical government because it's working against the interests of the people. So therefore, it's the people's responsibility to deal with, to correct that ill, to correct that contradiction. And if the people don't, then it's the people that are guilty of treason and deception and fraud and everything else. It's the people that are ultimately responsible because it's their job to overthrow it. We are the ones that create the government, form the government. The Christians should be pushing for a theocracy, but all of us, we should be pushing for a government that's fair and just, and that equates to a godly type government, if for lack of a better description. So if that's the case, and it's not that way, then we should be fighting for it. So this here is talking about a republic. A republic means rule by law. A democracy means a mob rule. You go back to the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Ethiopians, the ancient Nubians, which preceded, and I want to make sure this is clear to anybody whenever you get this, that the Ethiopians, the Nubians, the Egyptians, and other civilizations in Africa are the ones that taught the Greeks, the Romans, the Persians, and all the other civilizations out there. That was the first one. Now, most of the books that I read, of course, they give credit to the Greeks and the Romans for the most part of it. And they say that that's where civilization started. It did not start there. It did not start in Sumeria. That's more of the Zechariah Stitchin and European ideology that it started in Sumeria or Mesopotamia. It did not start there. Okay, they were actually colonies of the ancient Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Nubians. Okay, they were actually colonies of it, so therefore they would learn from there. Now, I don't want to get to a point where I'm glorifying ancient Africa, but we did create civilization, and the ills of civilization is what I'm most concerned about. So we had governments there as well, democratic forms of government, republican forms of government, theocratic forms of government, and theocratic form of government means ruled by God, means it's a God ruled by government, okay, ruled by God. So that's what
I
theocracy.
would go so far. I would go so far as to say you more than likely had communist governments there as well,
Yeah.
in ancient Africa, because it was Akhenaten who initially, I don't know if it was the fourth or Akhenaten the first, who brought Upper and Lower Egypt together. So you know, to get them up under the one rule.
Yeah, it started with Akhenaten the first, but Akhenaten the fourth was the one that had the courage to go ahead and use that revolution. Now, it was a revolution for monotheism, okay? And that's what was introduced to Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac, okay? They did not create monotheism. The Hebrews didn't. The Jews weren't even thought about then, okay? The first 5 books of the Bible didn't even talk about Jews, talk about Hebrews. And the Hebrews were the ones, it was, monotheism was introduced to them through a Pharaoh named Akhenaten the fourth, because Akhenaten the first through the third, they were trying to uproot the polytheistic governments, polytheistic forms of religion in Egypt at the time. And when I say polytheistic forms of religion and government kind of commingled, kind of went hand in hand, just like it kind of does today. Even though we talk about separation of church and state, it's really not, but we can say that. Okay, so at that time too, so a communistic form of government is what Akhenaten kind of brought into existence, okay, with this whole monotheistic mindset or centralization of society, both forms of religion, politics, economics, etc., because it makes it easier for that dominating power to control when power is centralized. So then the Persians got a hold of it, the Greeks got a hold of it, the Romans got a hold of it, and the Goths, Goths, and throughout history, it's all been just duplicated. And what happens is they start out well, and then they become contaminated, and then they're destroyed. The same thing that's going to happen to this American empire is what happened to the the African empires, what happened to the Greek empire, the Persian empire, the Romans, and everybody else, okay? Because history does nothing but repeat itself. And the reason it repeats itself is because of people like me and you that don't take the time to go and study history. It's too boring. We gotta pay the rent, we gotta pay the mortgage, we gotta pay the car note, we gotta go to work, everything but doing the right thing. The Bible says, my people are destroyed by lack of knowledge. We ain't doing that. We should be spending 50 to 60% of our time getting knowledge, not money. Okay? Because the useless money system, you should be focusing on trying to how do we correct the ills of it, and short of destroying it. Okay, and it'll be difficult to destroy it, but at least get the knowledge, and then we can we'll talk about that later. So the Republican form of government is the rule by law, and that's the most effective government. Now, Benjamin Franklin, upon leaving the Constitutional Convention, was asked by, I think it was a lady or a gentleman, asked, what kind of government do we have after he left the convention? And he said, we have a Republican form of government if you can keep it.
Yeah, let's go into that Federal Reserve with Andrew Jackson going from there.
Okay, well, let me lead up to it. I'm gonna have to do like Pooh with Tucker Carlson here. How much time? What we time is?
We got 45
about 50 minutes.
Okay, all right. So where was that now? Okay, I talking about the American Revolution. So when the founding forefathers had the revolution against England, okay, because of a money question, because we had Parliament was trying to impose a tax on the colonies, that the colonies had a direct relationship with King George III, not the Parliament. The Parliament, we were not under the Parliament's jurisdiction. We were under King George III's jurisdiction. The Parliament tried to intervene and impose a tax on the colonies. The colony said no. And it was a small tax, but the colony said no, you don't have no jurisdiction. And they gave, I think it was 24 resolutions or resolves, the Fairfax resolves that was issued to King George III, and he wouldn't fulfill his agreement on any of them, so he went to war. Now, that war there was all about the monetary system, just like pretty much all wars historically from the time of ancient Africa have been about following the money or the monetary concerns of the people. Okay, it's called Populism versus the Plutocracy. Now, this is a good book. I just introduced this to people tonight, but you may want to take a look at this book here. It's called A Populist versus a Plutocracy. We need to embrace a populist form of government. That means a government that's representative of the people and that wants to challenge the plutocracy or the money changers. Okay, so we had the War of 1812, I think, yeah, War of 1812 after the American Revolution, and that was a bankers' war as well, because we did not renew the charter. Now I'm jumping around here, folks. That's why I wanted people to read the books, because you get all that in between information that I'm leaving out. But from the American Revolution to 1812, we did sign a charter because the Federalist position won over in writing the Constitution. There were anti-Federalists too that we should be able to acknowledge what they had to say, because the anti-Federalists were more like the populists, where the Federalists was more like the plutocracy. And was it Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, George Washington? They were the ones that sort of embraced this ideology of the banking establishment. So they did sign a charter, 20-year charter, at the end of the American Revolution, to have a central bank. Now, the founding forefathers, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, Thomas Paine, they were all against the establishment. They were the anti-federalists, essentially, and they were against the central bank, because they said the central banks, if we ever let the central banks gain control, they would be more harmful than standing armies. That's a paraphrase. Essentially, that's what was said, though. Okay. So when the charter was not being entertained by re-signing it by the patriots of this country, the banking cartel out of England, and one of the dominant figures was the Rothschild family, who said, if we don't sign a charter, another 20-year charter to have a central bank here, then they're gonna have a war in the colonies. And that's exactly what happened. There was the War of 1812. After
Now,
the War
stop right there,
okay.
Will, because I want to kind of clarify something.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people seem to think that this War of 1812 was solely based on the Indians that were here, and it was about the Indians. You got to look, and this is why I like to what did we call it earlier when we read one book and we reference another book, because I want to see what's happening at one point in time versus another point in time. Because if someone says to me, hey, it was about the Indians, it was an Indian war and they were fighting the Indians, and then I can look exactly what you were saying, when I know Rothschild was one of the most powerful families in England, and they still had their tentacles around the US here. And when he told Andrew Jackson, if you don't renew the charter, then I'm going to wreak havoc and you'll be sorry. So that seems to me like a more I guess a truth, if you just say, it seems more of a truth to me than versus it all being all about Indians. Were Indians involved? Yes. Were Cherokee involved? Yes, they were a lot, because what they were doing when he said that he would cause a ruckus, and they started selling weapons to the Indians, and they started marshaling the Indians and getting them on their side from the Cherokee nations and all of the other nations there. So they were marshaling them to getting them to fight against those people who they were going up against. Now that makes more sense to me out of cross-referencing than just saying, yes, it's it was all about the Indian War. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I'm glad you made that reference, because the War of 1812 was as much about the Indians as the Civil War was about slavery. Okay. They always give you what they want you to think that particular disagreement or that particular rebellion or revolution or war was about.
And if you want to know the truth, you just always follow the money.
Right. And so that's why we want to really emphasize to people, look, go study. Okay. Don't just, regurgitate what the mainstream media is telling you, or what you got from the history books in the school system. They have a vested interest in you not knowing the truth, because once you know the truth, or something closer to the truth, or we don't even profess that we know the truth on the show, we're truth seekers. So we're constantly seeking truth. Okay. We're constantly seeking a truer version than what we've read or been exposed to. So the War of 1812 was as much about the Indians as the Civil War was about slavery. Okay. And that the slavery, if most people understand that the slavery issue didn't come up to around the middle of the Civil War. And that was because Lincoln with the North was kind of losing the war, and they had to get something to motivate the troops. Okay. So Andrew Jackson comes now. The war. Now this is the information I'm covering right now is in the Creature from Jekyll Island, and it'll be on the the history of money starting from the American Revolution to the Civil War.
But in this book here, The Suppressed History of American Banking by Xavier Hayes, okay, a great book.
Did you have a
And
source for anything for the War of 1812 for the viewers?
The Creature from Jekyll Island. I was just saying that The Creature from Jekyll Island is the best, one of the best sources.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And so now, now Andrew Jackson's in there as well. But this here gives the reason why I'm a proponent of this book and understanding Andrew Jackson, because Tony asked the question, is because he is the one that stood up against the banks. Now, others stood up against the banks. A lot of presidents stood up against the banks, starting with Tyler in the 1840s. Andrew Jackson, of course, stood up in the 1830s. Then there was, 1820s, 1830s, 1840s with Tyler, 1850s and 1860s with Lincoln to a certain degree. Okay. And then we go to McKinley, Garfield, Lincoln and Kennedy.
And not only, but then after Kennedy, you have
Nixon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think Reagan a little bit too.
Well, we'll get into Reagan then. Yeah, Reagan a little bit. He's more of a conservative, so he was dealing with fiscal policy from a conservative perspective, but it did have some blowback. Okay, so Andrew Jackson. This says President Jackson's veto message regarding the Bank of the United States. Folks, if we really want to understand usury, now this is usury in layman's terms. Okay, we trying to give you a biblical perspective, but we trying to give it to you in layman's terms as well. Okay, because some people don't understand that archaic language in the Bible, so we'll show it to you here. This is why Jesus Christ and many others before him and after him fought against the usurious activity of money or usury, because there's nothing but establishment of a central bank which manipulates the money supply. And then the bankers make all the money off of interest, and you're still there broke and destitute like you started at the very beginning. I laugh at these people talking about, oh, I'm working for my retirement. I'm working toward my retirement. Okay, that's like a slave saying he's working to be free, but he ain't doing nothing to be free. You're never going to be free based on that approach. So the veto message, I would encourage people to read the veto message Andrew Jackson read to the Congress before he vetoed the charter of the new bank, the new charter of the Bank of the United States. Now, in saying that paved the way for Lincoln and the Civil War. Now, with Andrew Jackson, let me go back to Andrew Jackson for a minute, because historically, any personality that you were given historically as a hero, they have their villainous character right there as well. I hope I'm using the right description. Their villainous character. We all have both good and bad in us, and we all throughout our lives have done good and have done bad. And so I've read books on the good personality of Andrew Jackson, and I've read books on the bad personality of Andrew Jackson. I've read books on the same with Lincoln, the same with McKinley, Garfield, Roosevelt, and all the rest of them. Okay, so but you have to be able to read both sides and make a educated decision, a hypothetical guess, I guess you could say, educated guess. But with Andrew Jackson, yeah, he had slaves. Most of them had slaves, but a lot of them did want to get rid of slavery. But the point is, whether they had slaves or not is not my concern. My concern is, were the slaves doing what they're supposed to do and trying to overturn the oppressive conditions? Because if they were agreeable with it, which I find based on the books that I've read, most of them were just agreeing with it because they didn't want to cause any more ruckus. They want to just live their lives and then wait till they die and go to heaven, which I very much doubt that any of them are in heaven, because they didn't do their job here on earth and trying to free themselves from tyranny and injustice. Okay, so Andrew Jackson did have his contradictions, but the overwhelming positive note of Andrew Jackson that he fought against the banks, and the banks were the ultimate problem is what's keeping society oppressed, both blacks and whites, orange, pinks, and yellows. It's keeping us all oppressed. And if he had been successful in doing that and being able to let his forerunners know as well on what they were doing, or the people after him, his post-runners, I guess that's the description, his post-runners after him, then we could have probably had a much better lifestyle here now. But each president has done their parts in further enslaving the population because the populations have allowed them to do it. And we didn't follow the Constitution or the Bible. Okay, the Bible is with a good blueprint for Christians or for anybody for that matter. Even if you want to say you don't believe in God, you can still say, hey, but this book has a great strategy for us to overturn the money changers, because Jesus went into the temple and did it. And there were people even before Jesus that went into the temple and did the same thing. I was trying to give you some names here because I didn't memorize the names, but even in the Roman Empire, there were people such as that's in populism versus plutocracy, and that's Bariathus went after the money changers around 149 BC before Christ. In Sicily, 9 years earlier or 9 years later, Enos, Ennus, went against the money changers, unsuccessful once again. And then in 74 BC, Spartacus in 74 BC. This is all before Christ. We're going against the money changers. And then when Jesus comes along, especially in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is the books that were suppressed and kept out the Bible.
What book was that? Was that? Huh? What book was that?
Oh, I showed this one already.
Pluto. Okay.
Pluto. And I got most of these books I'm showing tonight I got from the American Free Press. So I'd encourage people to go into the American Free Press and order these books if you want to get them, or the Barnes Review. And you can put their information in the chat if you want, save on for those books there. So I mean, I know I'm pressed for time in a way, but just Andrew Jackson did perform a lot of good acts, like all of them did. Okay, someday we're going to talk about the 3/5 clause that the South pushed for. It wasn't the North. The South pushed for the 3/5 clause of the slaves being counted. Okay, whereas the North didn't want that. Okay, and that's in the Creature from Jekyll Island as well. Yeah, and that makes sense after reading alternative.
Yeah, it makes sense. But the misinterpretation or the misnomer today is that they consider the black man 3/4 of a human being.
3/5.
But that's the narrative that they want people to believe. Because if they can keep you confused and angry, then they know they can keep you guys bickering. They can keep us bickering, amongst one another while they continue to go ahead and do their dirty deeds. And the 3/5 clause was nothing about being 3/5 of a man. It had to do with property. That's what it had to do with. But again, that's what they painted the picture as, and we
give you source too. Give you a source on that too.
The source is right where you were talking about.
Oh, okay. Talking about in the
Island. Creature Island with G. Edward Griffin. That comes right there from that book, and he expounds on it. And not only does he expound on it, but also the other book, the book about black slavery. If you give me a second, I can get it and show it. Yeah, black slave owners. It also talks about it in that particular book too. And this is another reason why I like to cross-reference, because these two authors have nothing to do with each other, but yet their stories or whatever they're writing, they parallel. And so that's when you know that you're on to something, because these authors have, one is a black author and one is a white author, and one is 90 years old and the other one is 50 years old. So, but their difference out of their research, it parallels. And so not only did G. Edward Griffin write about the 3/5 clause, but this guy also that wrote that other book, Black Slavery, Larry Coker, who was a black guy, he also wrote about that in his book as well. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's an important discussion. We'll hopefully go ahead, Tim.
Go ahead. Good.
Oh no, you gonna say something? Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out that what, in summary, as we're beginning to wrap up here, I just wanted to point out that the picture and the cover of Usury Christendom. If anybody could really see it, but if you order the book, you'll be able to tell. But in the book, it actually gives you a description of what's going on there, and that's Jesus driving out the it's out of John, the 2nd chapter, 15 and 15. For those of you that are interested, and I've got it pulled up here if we need to read it. But that's Jesus driving out the money changers out of the temple, and the Bible talks about each man's got his cross to bear. And hypothetically speaking, this was a cross that Jesus picked up and bear. He was going against these money changers and being a freedom fighter and trying to change things. And again, this is exactly what we're trying to do here. We picked up our cross. We're not pointing any fingers, but we are saying, hey, these Christians, this is really their job to be doing. I don't subscribe to the Christian ideology anymore because of the confusion, but I do follow the fundamental principles of the Bible and still believe in those.
In other words, what he's saying, he doesn't interpret the Bible like a slave. Like when it was given to us in slavery, we had interpreted it in this non-passive, non-aggressive way. But there were people even at that time that said, no, that's not what it's saying. We as slaves have to rebel because slavery is a sin. So we're even reading the Bible right now like we were as slaves at the slave times. So we're reading it as a free people now, as people that are responsible for our own actions and the need to turn over our own conditions that we created. Okay, did nobody create this for us? We did this ourselves.
Well, you all shared a video in our group chat the other week about Sherry Peel Jackson, and she said that one of the last chains we have on us is the income tax, and I think we've got a lot of chains on us that we're still shackled to slavery. With our ignorance and the income tax
Sure. Whenever we say names, be sure give a little brief description of the person who we're talking about.
Sherry Peel Jackson. I believe she was an auditor with the IRS, and she was an auditor with the IRS, and after her, I believe she was with them about 15 years, maybe I think it was 8 years actually. And through her time there, she was able to recognize some inconsistencies with her training compared to how they want her to apply the law when it came to not foreclosures, but what was her auditing when she actually went out to do actual audits, and she recognized some inconsistencies with that. And she actually came out and she spoke against the IRS and informed us that it's all voluntary. The whole tax system is voluntarily.
Well, more than
and it's based upon.
More than that. She was the one I knew her personally. I met her in Atlanta back at a UCC conference back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and she's the one that actually recommended this book to me by Pastor John Weaver, Sherry Peel Jackson, auditor or an investigative auditor for the IRS. But what happened was she heard someone had said they would give her $5,000, I think it was $50,000, if they could show her in the IRS code that it was voluntary and not mandatory. And she said, I'm a tax auditor or whatever, and I know that I can prove I can get this $50,000. I'm gonna prove to them that the tax system is based on mandatory compliance. And then she found out it wasn't based on mandatory compliance, and so she eventually left the IRS and started going around the country preaching at seminars, which I attended, telling people that our tax system is based on voluntary compliance and individual self-assessment.
Well, hold on.
She did that, folks.
Hey, but hold on, Will. Yeah, she left the IRS, but I think it was because she got onto them, and then when she asked the question, they told her to tenure her resignation immediately. So she didn't quit. They kind of once they knew that she knew, they was like, okay, the gig is up. Get her out of here.
Also want to add, I noticed because I talked to a few different people about this, one of them being my mother, and I know she doesn't really focus on politics, but one thing I have to add is I know this stuff isn't fun to go over, but this is the world we live in, and if we're going to play an active part in it, we've got to know about everything that's going on, even these boring topics such as political stuff and Federal Reserve stuff and usury and Christendom. This is stuff that we have to know. It's crucial.
It is, and it's cumbersome. It gets real boring, but that's why they do it just like that. They put in the book because they know most of us, black, white, orange, pink, or yellow, aren't going to read a book. Okay, not just black people don't read books. A lot of people don't read books, and they bury this information right in the books, and most of us are considered boring to read a book, or unprofessional, or not chic, or whatever they call it. And so they want to just look at a video on YouTube and see what somebody else's definition of it is, and then they run around regurgitating that nonsense that somebody else said on YouTube. And I'm not just blasting YouTube. There's a lot of good people on YouTube. But what I find is that you need to still cross-reference them and check their material, or make them give you references that you can go read for yourself, and make sure that you understand what they're saying before you start to regurgitate it and articulate it like it's your own words.
Is that kind of like what you said at the beginning, Will? That everything you say is a lie until you go and figure it out for yourself. That's
exactly
kind of what you said.
Yeah, and that's what we should do. We should all speak like that. So we don't consider ourselves no hugely intelligent people or anything like that. We just consider ourselves people that want to. Oh, somebody said something. I thought I heard somebody say something in the background. Question.
But we can't render unquestioned obedience to to this tyrannical government.
We can't, yeah. So where we at, Tone? We left did I leave off at
well, we were talking about we were going to lead up into the Federal Reserve, and so you was talking about Andrew Jackson and how he went up against the central bankers and Rothschild. So now going forward from there, we were talking about Lincoln and what Lincoln was going up against. And ultimately we get up into the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 and how it is and how it ushered in the Federal Reserve.
And let's deal with Lincoln first, part, because Lincoln paved the way for the Federal Reserve to be created in 1913. Okay. Lincoln was a Republican, by the way. I just want to let people know that he was a Republican, and he is the one that the South, that they flipped their roles. So the South was the conservative at that time, and the North were the liberal leftist Republicans, and the North was the South was the conservative Democrats. And fortunately, this book here makes a lot of sense. It's called Red Republicans: Marxism in the Civil War. It shows you all the correspondence between the nemesis of what's his name, Karl Marx, and Frederick Engels, correspondence with Abraham Lincoln. I didn't know that at first. I didn't know that they were corresponding to the level that they were corresponding. But the communists essentially, and I'm not trying to applaud capitalism either, because there's no true capitalist country that exists, just like there's no true communist country that exists. I think we're going to have to eventually merge the two, converge the two, and use some of the good from each side in order to have an effective system that's going to be representative of the people. But the communism is a centralization of power that Akhenaten first started to promote back in around 1500 BC, or before that, 1700, 1500 BC. Akhenaten was exploring that concept, even though it was being explored earlier than that with his forefathers. Akhenaten the first through the third. Anyway, Abraham Lincoln was simply a leftist, okay? Because the Republican Party was inundated with that at the time. And he was part of the ACS, the American Colonization Society, before he became president. And the American Colonization Society wanted to take the Black Africans that were enslaved, whatever you want to call them, and send them to Africa. Okay, that was part of the American Colonization Society, which infuriated a lot of Blacks at the time. And if you want to get more insight on that, you can read, I think, Robert Dick's book called Black Protest. I don't have that book with me right now, but it's Robert Dick, and it's called Black Protest. And it gives you a lot of different dynamic discussion by the freed Blacks at the time prior to the antebellum South, or prior to the Civil War. Okay, from the 1800s to about the 1840s, where a lot of great discussion was going on about what are we going to do with the Black situation. So Lincoln, what the South would call the War of Northern Aggression, because the right had the South had all the right in the world to secede from the Union, and Lincoln overruled them. And this book here really goes into detail and shows all the information about how Lincoln was just violating all the laws, even of the Constitution, which gave the states rights to secede from the Union at any time that they became disgruntled. Okay, They had the right to secede. They were own autonomous organization. They only came to the Union on their own free will, and they could leave the Union on their own free will. So the South did practice that. It was not about a civil war. It was not about slavery. It was about heavy taxation. One of the primary reasons is the heavy taxation on the North imposed on the South, from a pre-industrial society to an agricultural society. That's when one of the problems was the reason why the South decided to secede from the Union. The South hated slavery more so than the North. Okay, I know your history books. You've allowed your history books to indoctrinate you with this nonsense about the South was pro-slavery and all like that. There were elements of the South that were pro-slavery, but a lot of the people in the South were against slavery. Your earliest abolitionists were found in the South. Robert E. Lee, one of the generals in the South, was an abolitionist, okay? And a lot of these people freed their slaves even before the North imposed the Civil War on them, which the Civil War, once again, was not about slavery. That didn't come to the Emancipation Proclamation later on, essentially when the North was losing, okay? And the black slave owners in the South were fighting and were great marksmen and great soldiers, and they were using these blacks in the North, in the South, to fight in the war with them, okay? There was some resistance, but for the most part, the blacks came in there, and they were very good soldiers, and they were whipping the pants off of the North. So the North had to say, "Well, we got to get some of these people on our side."
Hey, so
Lincoln,
Will, I wanna just kind of interrupt a little bit, 1 second, and continue on. But now when we talk about that North and South and the slavery, we also have to note that in the South, there were more black slave owners than there were white slave owners in the South. And when I say the word slavery, that word was used later on. It was used later on because then we had a lot of people who were in servitude. They were serving out contracts. So these people that were serving out their contracts, once they finished their contract, they in turn went on ahead and bought land and bought slaves, just as they were indentured. That's the word I'm looking for, indentured servants. A lot of people came from, West Africa or maybe England or something like that, and they wanted to come over here. And when it costs a lot of money to come over here. Back then, I think it was like £8. Back then, £8 was a lot of money. And so when they came over here, that you're just not going to get a free ride. You had to, you were indentured servant. So one of the first questions that I asked to people who, talk about slaves and, we talk about black slave owners. Well, how did you become a black slave owner? Because I thought slaves didn't make money. You were just a slave. So how is it that you could buy your own land and buy your own slaves, if you didn't make money as a slave? So now we have to talk about Anthony Johnson, who was the first legal black slave owner in 1790.
Give your source too,
black
Tom.
Man. And that's just something that I have to go also and get another book. Well, actually,
it's in Larry Koger's book, Black Slave Labor.
No. It's right here in this book right
here.
Larry Koger, and it's also in this book here. I believe it's in this book right here, The Score. It's also mentioned in this book here. So now we have to go back and we have to re-examine this whole thing about black slavery being, a 400-year thing. And I think it's sort of like what Kanye was saying. I think that was a choice. But you can go back.
Yeah, I believe it was a choice.
Hey, how y'all doing? How y'all doing this evening? This Officer Mike on the phone, man. I'm Ant's homeboy. I just want to introduce myself real quick. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Are you Anthony Jr.'s friend?
Correct.
Oh, okay, great. Welcome on. I know you said you're gonna get on about 8. Oh gosh, 8:41. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was having issues with the link, but I was just like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and call in.
I'm on the line, y'all too.
Okay. All right. Hey, well, listen. While we're talking about that issue of slavery, the first slaves in this country were white, not black. Okay, and they weren't indentured service. They were really slaves
being brutally treated just like we say that the black slaves were. This book here is a good book, To Hell or Barbados, The Ethnic Cleansing of Ireland. So the Irish pretty much were the first slaves in this country, written by Sean O'Callaghan. So take a look at that book too when you get a chance. That slavery and the majority of the slaves. There's two other volumes, a volume of books by the Nation of Islam, written by the Nation of Islam, called "The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews," and it delves into the real slaveholders in the South. Okay, the whites really couldn't afford the slaves either. It was the Jews who were masquerading as whites who had the majority of the slaves in the South. And
that's another topic we're gonna have to get into.
Yeah.
All of this history being revealed, man, it's another topic we're gonna end up having to get into, because now we're gonna have to talk about who the Jews are.
Yeah. So the secret relationship between blacks and Jews by the Nation of Islam. Get that book, folks. Okay, the volume 1 and volume 2, and read them. I've read both of them, and they make a lot of sense. They really open my eyes up to who really was controlling the slaves in the South. I had the biggest slave plantation and ran slavery in the South. Okay, so anyway, now let me not get off of Lincoln, because Lincoln imposed what they call federal law and never lifted it. He's the one that gave the permission of the federal government to grow, as opposed to what the Constitution was promoting, which is limited government. Okay, the states are the ones that's supposed to have the ultimate power, and the sheriff is supposed to be the most powerful man in that state. Okay, but unfortunately, the federal government, which was promulgated through the Lincoln administration, and was being able to, but was never decreased after the Civil War. So that's what paved the way for the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. But one unique thing that Jefferson Davis, which was the president of the Confederacy, the Southern Confederacy, and Lincoln of the North, they proposed what you call the greenback and the grayback. They bypassed the bankers and they financed themselves, which was a strategic move, and it was later practiced by Adolf Hitler in Germany in the Weimar Republic. And those are effective strategies when a country bypasses the usurious nature of the central banks and creates their own money interest-free. Or if you're going to pay interest on money, you should pay it to your own government and not to a foreign cartel of bankers. Now, Lincoln, that's a good objective of Lincoln, and even Jefferson Davis in the South, when he introduced the graybacks. Okay, most people don't know about the graybacks, and that my source, I always like to give my source, so you can go read it for yourself and make sure I'm not just a gish galloping or making up stuff. We give sources on this show, folks, okay? Give your source so that people can go back and research it for themselves. Everything I'm telling you is a lie. And that source for what I was just mentioning comes out of, Lincoln, I have to get that in just a minute. Sorry about that, folks. I know it's in The Creature from Jekyll Island, but there's another source as well, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin. But anyway, so Lincoln, when he did exercise the option of bypassing the central banks, he didn't give the central banks, the foreign bankers, the control over the northern economy, and Jefferson Davis, the president of the South, didn't give them control over the southern economy by issuing their own interest-free money from their governments. Okay, similar to what Kennedy did with Executive Order 11110 in 1960s. Okay, but anyway, Lincoln, with his becoming, when he talked about keeping the Union together, which was a total wrong procedure, which is a violation of the Constitution. A violation of the Constitution. Any state can secede from the Union at any time. Now, even to this day, they can. It's probably going to be severe consequences, because what Lincoln did was he gave people the mindset that the Union has to stay together. I agree that the Union has to stay together, but there has to be some common ground. But if any state feels that something's going on that's against their interest, has the right to secede. So the South had the right to secede, and the South was dealing with that slavery question. Okay, for us brainwashed idiots out there that believe that the North was fighting for the freedom of the black people or the slaves, please get that out of your head. They are the ones that imposed the slavery on the South because of the agricultural lifestyle that the South had, which is more receptive of a slave type of environment anyway. But the South, the majority of people in the South were opposed to slavery. But remember what I said, those who were for it, read the Nation of Islam's book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews, and you'll find out who was for it and continued and had the influence to continue
that slavery, even from the American Revolution, because even in the American Revolution, they were going to give 20 years to go ahead and get rid of slavery. But the northern states are the ones that oppose it, not the South. The northern states oppose that clause from being put into the Constitution. Read it, and that would be found in. Oh, I can't find my book, and I just said I'll give you sources. Oh yeah, that'd be found in here. Okay, it's called Money, the 12th and Final Religion, published by the Barnes Review. Okay, that's by by R. Dwayne Willing. Please take a look at that and see what you think. But everything that's been told to us has pretty much been twisted to fit their narrative. Okay, and we accept it. Now, the bigger problem is not that they lied, but that we accepted it. Go ahead.
Quick question, brother. You said what was the name of that book again? I was trying to pull it up.
Oh, no problem. I'm sorry. Oh, you get it from the Barnes Review. Okay, the Barnes Review of the American Free Press. But they have what you call books.
What was the name of it? You said the 12th and Final Religion.
Oh, you just called in, right? You just called in. You can't see it. Okay, it's called.
Yeah, I just called in. My bad, man.
Okay, no problem. Okay,
no, the book before that, Will. I think the book that you were the
yeah. The 12th. It's called Money, the 12th and Final Religion, and it's published by the Barnes Review.
All right, cool. Yes, sir. Thank you, man. I wanted to pull it up real quick, man. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Now, hey, what the primary topic that we were discussing here is the coward Christians and the coward Hebrew Israelites and the coward people that misinterpret the Bible. That was a subject matter for here. I'm being kind of humorous, but that's what we were talking about today because of the subject of usury that's being either downplayed in the churches or not discussed at all. So we had started with this book here called The Christian and the Civil Government and how they sugarcoat the Bible and water it down, because what these true Christians were doing back then, where they were really revolutionary, fighting against tyranny and oppression of governments, specifically in the form of usury. So that's what you came in way in the middle. So, but I want to give you an update on where we started at for the discussion here, and we really want to hear from people. We're not trying. I know I'm being kind of humorous, but we are all cowards, not just Christians, but we are all cowards when it comes to dealing with the oppressive conditions that we ourselves created. And one of the primary ones is usury, understanding usury, the manipulation of money, and how we've allowed it to be used to keep us oppressed. And we have to deal with that question. So the resources that we're giving, we're talking about usury from ancient Africa forward. Okay, so now we're at the Civil War, approaching the World War I with
Gotcha. Yes, sir. So just let me know. Just let me know whenever me and Anthony interject and apply what we know and all this good stuff.
No, go ahead, because matter of fact, we're running short on time here. So I'm tired. Been talking all this time. So if you want to interject something, please do.
Okay. All right. Cool. Brother, so one thing I wanted to establish.
Hold on. Go ahead, Tony.
Anthony, what's your friend's name again?
It's Michael.
Say your name, brother. What's your name again?
It's Michael, Officer Michael. Or Officer Mike.
Officer Mike. Okay. Officer Mike. Go ahead, Officer Mike.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir. So, yeah, once again, I apologize for my tardiness. I was having issues getting in, but the pieces of the conversation that I've heard, I wanted to address these points briefly. Dealing with that word Jew, we have to be able to dissect where that word comes from. That word derives from the word Judah. So we have to be able to identify who's who and what's what. You did also make another point that I did. You said that a lot of people misinterpret the Bible.
And that's correct. Do you have sources for that? Because we're providing sources with everything we say. So just so that the viewers here, we could follow up on everything that you're saying. Do you have a source that we can go back and look at for that?
All right. Well, I mean, you can write all the biblical scriptures that I'm about to state. And do you have the
First
book
the
of
Judah
From
part.
Babylon to Timbuktu on you?
Okay, so your sources, you saying your source is the Bible?
No,
My main source is the 1611 Bible. Yes, with the Apocrypha, the 14 missing books that was taken out by the Roman Catholic Church, which is over 400 to 500 years of history of the so-called African Americans taken out of the Bible. Yes.
Okay, and is that where are you talking about the Judah part? Because I just wanted for my own personal reference when I go to check that out.
All right. So if you have your pen and paper, right?
Because I've got the Apocrypha and I've just got the King James Bible.
You said you do subscribe to the Apocrypha?
Yeah, I know. I said I have the Apocrypha and I have the King James Bible. So when I go to reference, I just want to know where to go to look for the word Jew coming from Judah.
And not a problem. Not a problem, sir. So dealing with that, right? We have to understand who's who and what's what and how identity's been taken and ripped off and everything, right? So I want to start off with Revelation chapter 3 and 9. So that's an important scripture. Matter of fact, 2 and 9 and then 3 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
And let me know when you got it, bro.
Give me one.
All right,
you said right. You want to do 2 and 9 first?
2 and 9.
Go ahead, I'm there.
Revelation 2 and 9.
What is that?
Go ahead, I'm there.
Now we remember we're on usury now. We want to talk about usury.
Yeah, but it was more than one point that was being used. So I mean, I don't know if you want me to directly just use that, speak on that. I mean, we could do that. Everything stems off the law, the Torah, the first 5 books of Moses. So dealing with our people, it's a lot of usury that's going on within our community itself. So we could drop the Revelation 2 and 9, and we could pick up Deuteronomy chapter. Let's get chapter 17. Let's see.
Tony, can you share the screen and pull those verses up for your?
I don't know that I can because they're on the phone.
Yeah, okay. All right. Deuteronomy 17 and then we got Revelation 2 and 9.
Okay, so if you still want me to go on that point, I mean we can. Because I want to address everything that was being said.
Well, today, since we're pressed for time, let's just focus on the usury aspect. You said that we're bogged up in usury. Just go ahead and hit that right quick.
Okay, all right, not a problem. And get Deuteronomy 23 and 19.
All right, Deuteronomy 23 and 19.
Yes, sir.
All right. It says, "Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury."
So that word VICTUALS, that's victual. That means food, right? So keep going.
You said keep going?
Keep going. Yep, I'm gonna get
"Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settest thine hand to in the land whither thou goest to possess it."
Give me 21.
"When thou shalt vow a vow unto the Lord thy God, thou shalt not slack to pay it, for the Lord thy God will surely require it of thee, and it would be sin in thee."
So dealing with that right there, first off, we got to identify us as a people who we is, because this ain't talking about everybody. The Bible isn't written to everybody. The misconception between the witchcraft due to Christianity let a Christian tell you John 3:16, Christ came to die for everybody. So dealing with this, we have to identify who this is even pertaining to. So just to pull up my next point, let's get the same book, but let's get chapter 1 and verse 1.
Y'all ready?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Just read it.
It says, "These be the words which Moses spake unto all Israel on the side Jordan in the wilderness."
No, to all who?
Unto all Israel on this side Jordan in the wilderness.
So no. He was speaking to all fake Jews.
Unto all of Israel on this side Jordan in the wilderness.
So dealing with this topic, right, when it comes down to usury and when it comes down to us doing us wrong, we have a us problem. And another point that I heard you say, which was astounding, Kanye made a great point saying that slavery was a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to ask yourself this question, what did Kanye even mean? Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1. And this is all dealing with usury, and I'm going to prove everything within just a few moments.
Can I get your personal interpretation of usury?
Yeah, because we don't want you to go. We just want your source. We can go look and read the source ourselves.
Yeah, what's your personal interpretation of usury? Because I'm getting a little confused. Because
well, and get the brother 1 Peter 4 and 11.
All right.
I'm gonna show you my personal opinion through scriptures.
1 Peter chapter 4, verse 11.
4 and 11. Read it real quick. Come on.
"If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which God giveth, that God in all things may be glorified through Jesus Christ, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen."
So anytime that I'm having a discussion regarding anything political, that's dealing with the Bible. Anything scientific, that's dealing with the Bible. Anything historical, that's dealing with the Bible. I don't use my own thoughts nor my own opinions. I have no thoughts or no opinion when the book itself have all the answers. Now, it takes somebody that followed the commandments and the laws of the Most High to have a certain understanding of the scriptures. You get what I'm saying? So I don't have time to give my own personal opinion. Once again, dealing with usury is dealing with an us problem. The curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 54 prophesies that we will have an evil eye towards one another. That's so-called black on black crime, or so-called black on brown crime, because the Latinos, the so-called Native Americans, the Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans, them are people too. They suffer the same curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28 by the so-called white man.
So who was he speaking to?
If we're going to have a conversation, we have to deal with its totality.
So who was he speaking to? And because you're in 2 Peter, so who was he speaking to in 1 Peter 2 and 13? Where he says, submit yourself, 1 Peter 2 and 13, verse 14. 13 and 14, God says, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or unto governors as unto them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them to do well. So who's he speaking? Is he just speaking to Israel then? Or who?
So let's get it. I'm gonna answer a scripture with a scripture, right? So, and give me Deuteronomy chapter 28 and give me verse 48.
Tony, you want to chime in too, because you come from this area.
Start at
Tony.
43.
No, I'm listening to him.
But they're gonna read the whole Bible, I think.
No, not because we ain't got that much time. The show gonna end up cutting off.
How much time do we have?
Well, it's 9:01.
Minutes, but
be done a minute ago.
Yeah,
we understand that I feel like every answer you're going to give us is going to be biblical already.
Let's
from your point of view, the Bible has all the answers. So it seems like everything that we'll ask you, referring to usury or referring to Christians' responsibility from the Bible, you're just going to refer back to the Bible. You're going to give us a
I
quote,
mean,
a verse from there to refer to.
You gotta figure this whole system that we talking about was built off of the Bible. Where do you think the word judicial system come from? The word judicial system comes from the tribe of Judah, because Judah is the lawgiver. So if we're going to talk about anything that has any type of structure or government in it, it has to be done with the Bible. Why? Because the new government is going to be put on the Messiah's shoulder, and it's going to be established on earth. Now,
Okay,
I'm
let
not
me ask
sure
you
what
a question.
nationality you claim to be.
So
What?
hold on.
Go
So
ahead, Tony.
let me ask you this. So you're saying
Tell him where you
that
came from, Tony. Tell him who you are.
now I ain't got time for all of that because he came late to the show. So we'll
Okay.
dive into that the next time. But
Okay.
so you're saying that it's going to all be put on the shoulders of the Messiah.
The true Messiah, not no doggone blue eye or blonde hair cracker either.
Yeah, I got that. So you're saying all of this is going to be put on the true Messiah.
You heard what I said?
I'm just confirming that's what you said.
Yeah. That's what I said, brother. Yes, sir.
Okay, so then the true Messiah, when you refer to that, or when you're talking about a true Messiah, who is this person? You talking about Jesus?
You can refer to him as Jesus. Last time I checked, the letter J was created about 400 or 500 years ago. When I read my 1611, it's the word I. So if we were talking Old English, it would be I too. Now, if you want to translate it today to what you would call Jesus, what you would call today, who you would call Jesus today, yes, that's what I'm referring to. Yahushua or Yeshua, whatever derivative type of form you want to say it. Jesus.
Okay, because what I'm saying is that you're saying that he's going to put it all on his shoulders. So it sounds to me like you're depending on somebody, this mythical person, to come out of the sky and save us all.
So I'm gonna tell you this: if we don't start to help ourselves, you can't expect the Most High nor His Son to help us. So once again, we've been commanded by the Most High Himself to come together and gather together. Now, as long as we have this individual and this crab of the barrel mentality, we're going to continue to fail. That's why when you go to the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 4 and 9, it says 2 is better than 1. What does that mean? If 2 can walk together and agree and be on the same accord with the same doctrine, with the same literature, everything's going to be on point.
So let me ask you this. So what happens when we all start to work on one accord, when we all starting to work together? Then is there how do you say his name again?
There may not be a need for him then.
Yeah, so is Yahushua going to come out of the sky then?
Well, there may not be a need for him.
Because you said, you said that I can't expect him to save us unless we save ourselves. So I'm trying to get to it.
Unless we come together, right.
So then at that point, can I expect him to come once we start working together? And where is he coming from?
So I'm glad you asked that question. And let me get Second Ezra. Chapter 13.
All right.
And start at verse 32.
Now, when you get a second, can we do John 2:15 and 15? Let's describe what Jesus was doing there.
Not a problem, brother. You said John 2 and 15?
Yeah. Because when we're talking about the Usury aspect,
if you want to hold off on the second Ezra.
Okay. Yeah, when we're talking about the Usury. I'm sorry, what'd you say?
No, I was saying if you wanted to get the John scripture first, and we hold off on the second Ezra, we can get the John scripture
I just
first.
wanted to see. Just to make sure I'm not interpreting this wrong. Could you give me you all's interpretation of John 2:15 and 15? Or just John 2:15.
You said John chapter 2 and 15, right? And 16?
Yeah. You could do 16 as well.
All right, go ahead. Okay, come on.
Because we went over this verse earlier today. You guys weren't here. We just want to make sure we didn't misinterpret it.
Not a problem. And bring that thing up.
All right, Second Ezra 13:32, right? Hello?
The second chapter of John, verse 15.
Okay.
You can start at 14 if you want, actually.
All right. It says, and found in the temple those that sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the changers of money sitting. Keep going.
And 15 too. That's the original verse I wanted.
All right. And when he had made a scourge of small cords, he drove them all out of the temple, and the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money and overthrew the tables.
So when we're talking about usury and the books we're digesting, we're going through another book you can write there, Usury and Christendom, the mortal sin that was not and now is, the mortal sin that was not and now is not. That wasn't,
Yeah,
that
Tony, I
was and
do.
now is not. It's by Michael Hoffman. If you want to write that down, we're reading that one, and this is the usury aspect that we're coming from because this is what the Bible's talking about, that aspect. And we're also doing the Christian and Civil Government by Pastor John Weaver. So if you want to take down those two books, you may be able to get them online PDF form if you don't want to buy them, and that just to give you a better some subject matter where we're coming from. Because when we're talking about usury in the Bible, we want to make sure that we're on the same page here, because we're kind of coming from the John 2, 14, 15. And I just
Well,
wonder, what's you guys' interpretation of that?
I'm not coming from. Oh,
go ahead. Go ahead, my bad. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is Kimbo William, because the show's getting ready to end. It ends at 9:00, so we just on borrowed time right now. But let me just say real quick, and we can hopefully get on next week and we can finish this discussion. But I'm not a Christian. I believe that all of us are oppressed by a usurious monetary system, black, white, orange, pink, yellow, and we all going to have to work together to overturn those conditions. I don't just specifically use the biblical reference, but I'm not opposed to it. But for those who do use it, we just want them to say, we say that, listen, this is a blueprint for us to deal with this monetary system to address the conditions and overthrow it.
I get it. The only problem with that situation is trying to hold hands with the enemies is not going to end well, bruh. Them people don't have no type of good intentions for it.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said the other nations don't have no type of good intentions for the true Israelites according to the Bible. So
okay,
that's a situation where the ideology of Christianity comes into play yet, because that's the same. It's a similar doctrine. Why?
Right.
Oh, let's all come together.
Christian.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is,
yeah.
Go ahead, sir. You got it.
No, I got to talk in this background, but I'm just saying that people that aren't Christians, we want to be able to unite everybody against this. Not to degrade the white man, not to degrade anybody else, because I have my problems with them as well. But I know that we're all being equally oppressed by this monetary system that we created.
I'm gonna tell you this, and I got to get a scripture on that. Let me get chapter 9 and 11 down.
But the verse don't mean anything to me from that regard. I mean, it may mean something to you, Tony, because you come from that background. I don't know. Does that mean something to you, Tony? Or?
So let me ask you this question. The brother that you're speaking, are you married to a white lady? If you don't mind me asking.
No, definitely not. I've only been married to black women, and all my children are black.
All right, that's what's up. That's what's up. Okay, cool. So now watch it.
I'm with you on that, brother, but I'm just saying we spend too much time alienating them when we don't need to, because they're oppressed by the same system we're oppressed by.
And guess what? And when the kingdom is established on earth, the people that took us into captivity will go into captivity. Now, this isn't being racist. That's not just going for the white people. Guess who else had the so-called black people in captivity? The Japanese. Guess who else also had the so-called black people in slavery? The Chinese. And guess who else?
Wait a minute,
The real Africans, the people that come from the bloodline of him, them, we're not the same people. So all this trying to be equal to everybody, that's out of the window, dog. That's out of the window.
Well, we had them in slavery
when the Most High said that the nation of Israel shall be above all nations on the earth, he meant that. He meant that. He ain't no equal to nobody.
Well, I'm not gonna say. I'm just saying that we're all oppressed, and we oppress them too. We're not the only ones that've been enslaved. We enslaved others as well for much longer than they enslaved us.
No doubt. I studied about the Moors. I know about the Moors.
Well, I'm not talking about the Moors. Hold on, I'm not just talking about the Moors. I'm talking about the ancient Egyptians as well, prior to the Moors. Prior to the Moors going into Spain.
Here's what I'm saying. What I want to do. Whenever anybody got time, I want to dissect the bloodlines, the family trees, the lineage, because we have to understand.
But Mike, what does that have to do? What does that have to do if you're participating in usury and taxes? And right now we have a noose around our neck. Right now we have a noose around our neck. So if you come down in the basement and I've been beat up in the club and I got a chain and cuffs around my neck and you start talking to me about a bloodline, I don't give a damn about a bloodline, brother. I'm trying to get out that chain because the next thing I know, they coming downstairs in that basement to kill me. And so I need to get out of that chain. And then we can romanticize and fantasize about, well, if you coulda, woulda, shoulda in the bloodlines, and then maybe I won't do it no more. But right now, I got a noose around my neck, and that noose is getting tighter and tighter. I need to get out of them chains first. So, I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you want to go into the bloodline thing. I can go there with you just as well. But that's what I'm trying to avoid. I don't want to get into the armchair quarterbacking of coulda, woulda, shouldas and the bloodlines. I want to get this noose from around my neck.
But see, this is what I'm saying. You wanna deal with an answer, right? That has everything to do with the Bible, but don't try to use the Bible, but only for bits and pieces. That's butt-ass backwards, brother. Because at the end of the day, the people that have the yokes and irons on our necks is the children of Israel. Because that was prophesied in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and 48.
But why would I believe a Bible that was man-made, and especially coming from a Greek society and a Roman society who were run by so-called Jews, you know what I'm saying, who created it all? And now you're following it and you're telling me that everything is in the Bible that is true.
We learn the same way that we learn anything else. The same way that we learn anything else from any textbook. The same way that we learn anything else from any textbook.
And guess what? And everything that I learned from a textbook has something different to say about the stuff that I've learned in the textbooks in school. That's why we talked earlier, had you guys come onto the show earlier. That's why we talked about cross-referencing. That's why we talked about these books right here. That's why we talked about if you go and look into society and you look into the records, you will see that there were black slaves first before there were any other kind of slaves. So,
and it was man-made.
You telling me about a Bible that was written by somebody who took over another society is not going to do anything for me in 2024. 2024, I got a chain around my neck.
That's what you got to listen though. You got to listen though. What other preacher is going to write?
What I'm saying, I can show you why you still got that chain on your neck, brother. That's all I'm saying.
One at a time.
I could go book chapter verse. I could go book chapter verse and don't get tired on this type of topic, dog. That's what I'm saying. So we have to if we're gonna deal with the situation, the systematic racism, and we're gonna deal with the Catholic Council, and we're gonna deal with the
no such thing as systematic racism.
Why are we the number one population in prison? I'm gonna go book chapter verse and I'm gonna show you.
Racism is the choices you make. That's what systematic racism is. That's the choices you make. You have the ability to change that.
You better believe it.
In the projects, and you know that you was born into a toxic family, and you know that the police are gonna be spying on you, and you know that they're gonna be profiling you. You have the ability to come up out of that neighborhood so that you don't experience it systematic or systemic racism. I have never experienced systemic racism ever in my 55 years of living. I have never experienced systemic racism. Have I experienced racism from a bigot, from somebody who's a prejudiced person? Yeah, I have experienced that, but not systemic racism. Not like how you talking about it.
Right. So do you pay taxes, brother?
Huh?
Do you pay taxes? Like anytime that you buy food or anything, do you pay taxes? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, so guess what? That's systematic racism. Point
No,
blank
it's not.
period. Because when you read the book of Baruch,
How is it
when
racist?
you read the
How is it
book of
racist?
Baruch, when you read the book of Baruch, chapter 3 and verse 8, it speaks about how we are still in the land of our captivity and subject to payment, man. The same conditions that Jesus Christ himself, so-called Jesus Christ himself, who is a so-called black man, when was in the land of Jerusalem, was ran by Rome, he himself was still in slavery and died innocent black man, so-called black man died.
And what was Yeshua doing? And what was Yeshua doing at the time? Yeshua was going into he was going in there and he was kicking over the tables and calling them a den of vipers. That's exactly what he's saying. So now we're lining that up to 2024, and we've allowed the Federal Reserve to come in when they passed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. So we've created that situation for ourselves. Nobody else did that but us. And we participated in so-called black man. We participated in that.
And might I add,
agree, brother.
We're on this platform. I don't know about anybody else, but we're trying to, if anything, trying to be followers of Christ. We're trying to be a freedom fighter, kind of like Christ was. Hebrew Israelites, Christians, what are you all doing? Is our question. What is it that you all are doing besides just I guess quoting the Bible, regurgitating the Bible? Besides that, because Jesus didn't regurgitate the Bible, he was out there in the field actually doing dirty work. I mean, very unseldom.
And what you said is right, because when you break down the etymology of who his mama is, the name Mary means rebel. He was a son of a rebel. So yes, Jesus Christ himself was the ultimate revolutionist, and he got despised by his own kinfolk and by Rome. So I understand what you're saying, but to sit here and say that he didn't quote scriptures, you sound mistaken. I could prove that right now.
Well, I said he seldom. I said he seldom. He was more so out in the field getting his hands dirty. He very seldom would quote. He would be out there doing active work actively.
Yeah. Go ahead, Will.
I need book chapter verse saying when you say when he wasn't quoting scriptures, because it was no New Testament while he was walking on the earth. He was always quoting from the Torah and from the Tanakh, which is the book of the prophets, brother.
Good.
So like I said, you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Let Will speak.
Go ahead, brother.
Yeah. So let's do this, because we are running out of time. I don't know when the thing gonna cut off, and I think everybody got something valuable to say or input in this discussion. Can you get back on next Thursday at 8 o'clock?
Thursday, I'll be out as soon as I clock out. I'll be on this same link right here.
Okay. Yeah. Give us a time though. Give us what time can you get on?
I'll say 8:05 at the latest.
Okay.
Since I know how to get on now.
Hey, can we? Okay, is there another day that we could do a call, Tony? Just maybe a special call with this brother, because I do want to talk with him more. But Thursday, 8 o'clock is gonna kill us, because we already started at 7. Tony, there a different time?
I didn't. My bad, brother. I didn't know what time y'all started. I apologize.
Can you get on at 7?
Shoot. Sundays I'm usually free. I could do next Sunday.
What? Next Sunday? This Sunday coming?
Whatever Sunday. What Sunday you good for?
If it's
the 18th.
We want to do it on Thursday.
Can you do the 18th?
This coming Sunday, I can do that.
Time, I'm good. As long as it's in the evening time, I'm good.
Okay.
And evening, I mean like after like 5 o'clock or something.
All right, that's cool. I should be free. I don't got schedule.
What day you talking?
Sunday the 18th.
Okay, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Tony, I'm cool with 7.
All right, 7 it is. But I think.
And in the meantime, is there anything that we need to be studying from you? Is there any type of material you want us to review? I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Mike.
Are you talking to me? I'm
sorry. Officer Mike.
I mean, whatever information that you already have, man. I'm an open-minded person, brother. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, we're going to go with the Usury. We're going to finish up with Usury.
I can dig it. I can dig it, man.
Okay.
Cause there's a lot of that going on, man, especially in the Christian church. Oh, tithe, and you gonna get blessed. Okay.
Hey, but listen, wait a minute. Now, listen, what we talking about is the income tax. I mean, I know there's tax on food and things like that. This is William, but our brother Kimber. I want to talk about the income tax that they imposed on your payroll check. That's the big tax. The tax you pay on food and stuff like that. Okay, I'm not as opposed to that as I am the income tax. I am opposed to it, but the income tax coming out of your check, that's what I don't pay, and I'm trying to encourage people not to pay that. And we can take that money and use it in our communities to overthrow these usury conditions that exist.
Right,
and that's
right,
what we're
right.
supposed to do. According to Romans 13, that's what we're supposed to be doing anyway.
Obeying the law of the land, the powers that
we're
be.
gonna chop it up on, that's
Yeah,
gonna chop
we'll
up
chop
on
it up on Sunday.
Is that cool?
I'm cool, and look, and check this out. I want to thank y'all for having me on, and I
Oh, no
appreciate
problem.
y'all
Likewise.
time. You know what I'm saying? And I respect everybody's views, like real still. Like it's a lot of y'all topics, man. What y'all speaking about now, it's important to me because there's a lot of things that can be done about it.
Yes, we agree. We agree. Okay, brother. Well, Tony, I mean, if we go first, Tony, how long can we go on this? I'm thinking it's going to cut off.
It's about to cut off.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, bro. All right, so we'll talk about
but what I'm gonna do is real quick, I'm gonna put, because I think since you guys, Thursday is a bad day, we're doing it on Sunday for you guys, just amongst us, unless anybody else wants to get on. So when I send the chat, Anthony, I'm gonna put in the chat, the group chat, the link, because this link is gonna be different from the link that we generally have on Thursdays. It's going to be a new link because I don't want to interfere with that link.
Okay.
So every week we could hit this link?
Every Thursday, this link. But on Sunday, if we're going to do something on Sunday, I'm going to put a new link for Sunday show in the chat.
Okay.
You follow what I'm saying?
All right. Yeah.
But then after that, we'll revert back to this link right here.
Yeah, and also, Officer Mike, we're trying to implement solutions as well. We're not just sitting here going to talk all day. We want to do what Jesus did as well, because we want to go get our hands dirty and figure out solutions.
I'm ready to kick some tables over.
Give me liberty or give me death.
That's it,
is the motto we have.
Hey, I was wondering how much time we got left because I have somebody that has a question.
Okay.
And you know, I think Jesus would say the same thing. Jesus would say, "Give me liberty or give me death."
Got 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes because the show ends at 9:30.
All right, let the brother ask a question. Somebody got to ask a question.
Hey, that's good. Run it up.
They said
but you're right though on what you're saying, because Christ compelled of the people that go to the highways and byways and beg the people to the man. I don't sit on my hands, but I hear whoever else go.
But you Hebrew Israelites are doing more work than the Christians.
Let's get that question in.
They said this
about the Hebrew Israelites.
In my opinion, this is Savion here. You all are doing more work than the Christians. I mean, I see you guys out on the street actively voicing your interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah, but now it's starting to go
heavily.
It's time now to go into the synagogues and kick the tables over. We got to damn start kicking the tables over. That's what we got to start doing.
Yeah,
that's what we ain't doing. That's the part that's missing.
Right. And you're right, and I'm with that. But the level one is to that whole solution is gathering together. Because if we can't come together as a people, you know what I'm saying? Obviously, you know what I'm saying, when the finances come into play, you know what I'm saying, we could probably link up with other brothers that's in Puerto Rico or Jamaica or let alone right here in Florida. You get what I'm saying? But once we get together,
I'm gonna tell you something off the mic. Will, tell them what you said. Will, you said you don't care if they work for the KKK.
But hold on, I'm gonna tell you something, Officer Mike. It don't matter about all of that other stuff you said, because as somebody told me, and Will can attest to this, I think Will told me, and then I learned it, and then I told Savion, you don't mess with black folk first. It's sad, but it's true. I don't mess with black folk first. You know why? Because they'll make you go bankrupt. So what you said, in so much as we got to come together, it don't matter. I mean, I'm not saying to just only mess with white folk, but what I'm saying is that the information that we got now, it's only going to take a certain percentage of us to start it. Once we start doing it, then people are going to start gravitating towards that. You see what I'm saying? If it's only 10% of us, you know what I'm saying, the other 3% or 5% or other 10% are going to start gravitating towards it. And then it'll be a movement. But as long as we continue to talk to say, man, we got to do something, we got to get our people together. That's just like in financial situations. Whenever is it a good time to buy a house? You know what I'm saying? If you keep waiting to buy a house, you ain't gonna never buy a house.
That Humpty Dumpty effect. We just got to get the ball going.
You just got to start it going. And hopefully the other people will see that and they will just gravitate with you.
So when in history, right, when in history has it ever been a successful movement, right, or organization where all these other different nations that's not of the same bloodline, and damn the color, because the color has a part, but that bloodline matters because it's so much pollution and dilution of the blood. You know what I'm saying? Complexion, so that's not even funny. So
we got 2 minutes. We got 2 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So historically,
let's get the question in. Somebody had a question.
No, he didn't. He backed down. I think he said he's going to ask it on Sunday. But let me just respond to what he said. When I agree. I'll come from the Black Power movement, so I agree with the unity of Black people. But all we need is we don't need all of them. If we can just get a percentage of them, effective percentage of them, we can do what we need to do. We don't have to get all of them.
Right. And I agree. People. I agree with what you're saying, but because even the Most High works in small numbers. You got to remember. When you read the book of Zechariah, chapter 13 and 8, 2/3 of Israel, the so-called Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, are going to die because they don't want to bind, they don't want to come together, and they don't want to follow the ways of the Most High. Which so be it, their government.
So be it. So be it.
Let them die.
It ain't nothing I can do.
You and I know better.
Yeah, you're right. So
everybody on this call know better. So be it. If 2/3 of them die, guess what? That's the 144,000.
And that okay. So since you know that, that's who's gonna be sealed. That's the number. There 144,000. 12,000 from where? From each of the tribes of Israel.
And I was just about to ask for the number, and I think we got a number, that 144,000.
All right, so check it out, man. We're gonna relink back up. This show about to end. So yeah, I get what y'all.
And it was recorded. Y'all can go back and see the portion that was recorded earlier. You know, it was unorganized, but we were there.
All right. Later.
Peace.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a good night.
Shalom, big dog.
Shalom,
people. Shalom.